Hello and good morning, Atlanta. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester, where we enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And that's what we want to do today. Get you fired up this morning. Well, we are talking faith, family, and country. Country music, that is. My guest today is Richard Lynch out of Waynesville, Ohio. And we are talking, like I said, about faith, family, and country and how to keep those traditions alive. Well, independent country music Hall of Fame artist Richard Lynch has followed in the footsteps of his father, recording and performing country music that stays true to the genre. His faith has helped him maneuver that sometimes choppy waters of the music industry, as well as guiding him on his journey to help others, including farmers and our veterans. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about Richard. Richard Lynch is an American country music artist who has compiled a long list of country hits and chart toppers in the world of traditional country music. His single, A Better Place, topped the New Music Weekly AM/FM country chart, the Indie World Country Record Report, and spent an incredible 32 weeks atop the Roots Music Report True Country Chart. His next single, We're American Proud, is topped the charts as well. His latest release, Cut and Paste, also reached number one on the airplay charts. Richard is a multi-award winning artist and a member of the Independent Country Music Hall of Fame. So, without any further delay, let's bring on Richard Lynch. Hello, Richard. Thank you so much
Hey,
for joining me on the show.
hey, Dr. Angela, thanks for having me. What an honor. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining me today. You know, I love music. The one thing that my parents did was expose me to all forms of music because music really speaks to the soul. I think it's one of the things that can really, regardless of your race or your gender, it can really bond you together. And there's nothing like blending everyone on a good note. So anytime I can have an artist on the show, I definitely want to bring them on. So you have done so much, Richard. You've done so much. So I want to kind of pick your brain about that. And one of the first things is about the Independent Country Music Hall of Fame induction. That must have been an awesome moment in your life. Please share that with us.
Well, it really was. I kind of want to take you just a little bit back at our very beginning, if I may.
Yes.
I grew up in a country music household, and by that I mean my dad was an incredible singer and entertainer around the southwestern Ohio area, and I grew up in a time where, traditional country music was everywhere. My heroes back then would have been Merle Haggard and George Jones and Keith Whitley and Conway Twitty and all those incredible artists.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always had that amazing connection with my dad and the fact that he loved his music so much and I got to be around it. So it was influenced by him at a very young age, you might say. And by the time I was 15 years old, I was playing pretty much the honky-tonks in different places around the southwestern Ohio area. I got a little older, and I was playing 300-plus nights a year. So I've always loved the country music. I've always loved the fact that I got to be around such incredible people. My dad was an incredible influence on me. And, I just want to give you just a little bit of background about myself right there because it all leads to your question, how we got into the Country Music Hall of Fame. The Independent Country Music Hall of Fame is absolutely a major achievement for anybody, especially if you're born and bred into the business like I was. And to be around it and to be associated with the Hall of Fame is spectacular in the sense that your peers are the ones that put you there. So if your peers are liking what you do and they think that you're good enough to be there, that's quite an awesome achievement.
It's nothing like that type of praise from your peers, like you said. A vote of confidence. You really know that what you're doing is right. Not only do the fans love it, but those that listen from a technical point of view or from a professional point of view are also giving a tip of their hat to you. That's awesome.
That's really great because, the folks out there that come see us play and they spend their money and they buy our material, they buy our merchandise, and they support what we do is awesome, and I wouldn't trade them for nothing. But the folks that are actually in the business with me, and they're the ones that's kind of, putting the feather in my hat, I guess you might say. It doesn't get much of a better compliment than that. I really appreciate the fact that they was kind enough and supportive enough of me to be in the Hall of Fame there. It was really, really an awesome evening.
Now, I know that you have a new album that is out called Mending Fences. I love that title. Can you tell us a little bit about what can we expect on this particular EP?
Well, the Mending Fences album is an absolute joy to have been in that studio and recorded that album. You kind of touched on the title there, Mending Fences. I love that title. It can mean so many different things. Mending Fences can literally, I have a farm and we have a lot of chores to do here on the farm. We mend fences, but also it can also mend relationships. It can also mean things like mending fences in the political world out there. Not without getting too political, it'd be nice to see some of our folks that represents us in the political world mend some fences. But life itself would be an amazing journey, and if we can mend some fences and get things on the right track, and music is a great way to do that. The traditional country music has always been my way of my love and my journey through life, and this album came to me in the sense of about 35 or 40 songs was sent to me to pre-listen to and be get familiar with and see what song I would narrow down to put on this new Mending Fences album. So we went through all the tunes and we narrowed down the 12 that made it, and I'm pretty proud to say that I got to write 2 of my own songs that got to go on this album. And the rest of the songs were written by amazing songwriters there in Nashville, Tennessee. And, if you're around good country music and you have the luxury to have other songwriters send you material, that's a pretty amazing position that you've gotten yourself into over all these years. And so I'm very fortunate and I'm very happy that my music is being accepted so widely these days. And, the Mending Fences album is an absolute joy to be around. I'm so proud of it. There's a lady that I did a duet with on this particular album. Her name is Rhonda Vincent. And for the folks that don't know who Rhonda is, she's quite the veteran in the bluegrass world and also the traditional country music world here lately. And I'm very proud of the fact that I got to do a duet with her on this album. And, I mentioned that I wrote a couple of tunes on here, so this album is from the heart, you might say. Yes.
But those are they're definitely the best ones, or you're able to sing them with so much more passion or control or just nuance that's in the song, because it really and truly is you sharing your soul. And not that the songwriters, that awesome songwriters can't do that as well, but it's just always something about the songs that you write yourself that really kind of hit home a little bit more, and people can they can hear your soul in the song. They can really and truly hear that you're trying to share a little bit more. Now, let me ask you a question, because you mentioned that you have some people on this particular album. Just a side question. Who are some people, or let me rephrase, have you worked with everyone that you've wanted to work with, or do you still have some people that are on your list? And can you share any of them, or do you kind of keep that a little more personal between the two of you?
Well, I have worked with a lot of great country music artists over the years, and I've been fortunate enough to record with several of them also. But I would like to get to the point where I've could say I did a show with George Strait or did a show with Alan Jackson. I've never done that yet. I would love to say that I had the opportunity to do that. And something that's always been a big goal of mine, I play all over the country. As a matter of fact, I even play in Ireland. But I've never managed to do a show on the Grand Ole Opry yet, and that's something that I would love to say that I have that under my belt at some point, and I really do believe it will happen. But those are some big goals that
those are your goals.
I would love to see happen.
That's right. And we all understand that if we put that up on our vision board and we keep, praying and asking for it and believing that it will happen, because look at all of the things that you've accomplished. So we know that it is definitely something that you're shooting for, and if it's possible to do it, I believe that you will definitely get it done. Speaking of things that you have done, you are so welcome. And folks, we're not blowing smoke here. When you work and you go after your goals and you put your mind to it, then there's nothing that you can't accomplish. And we know that by the wonderful good graces of God that we're able to do so much when we work in our purpose. And working in your purpose is so important. And speaking of that, the Josie-Music-Award, that just happened for you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the Josie Music Awards is this pretty amazing young lady who started the Josie Awards, and she has a great appreciation and admiration for a lot of these independent artists. There's lots of folks out there that work and strive for years on end, and they don't seem to really get the notoriety that they deserve. And Josie took upon herself, her and her mother, to change that. And she started the Josie Awards about 3 years ago, and I was fortunate enough to be part of the group from the very beginning. And she nominated me for several positions and awards the very first year, and then more the second year. And like I said, this is the third year. And she conducted her award ceremony at the Titan Stadium in downtown Nashville, Tennessee. Wow. And she gave me the Entertainer of the Year for the country music genre this year, and I was so blessed and fortunate and so appreciative of her notoriety to me. And I wrote a song also that she gave me an award for. The award was based on appreciation for America, and I wrote a song called We're American Proud. And I'm so proud that song was notarized and took a lot of notice from folks around the industry that shows how much we love our country. And I was fortunate enough for that song to become an award recipient as well this year for that particular song. It means a lot to me.
And I know that so many people are, not that there's anything wrong with mainstream music or shows or any of those types of things, but the indie world has definitely grown from what it used to be even 10 years ago, that if you don't make it into popular or the mainstream side, boy, you can still have quite a following and still be an indie artist. Thanks to social media and things like the Josie Awards, people are, like you said, getting recognized for their talents. And I think that that's what's so important is just sharing the talents with the world. And just because you may not be where you're striving to be at that particular moment, with some of our newer artists, it doesn't mean that your light is shining any less bright than anyone else. So thank you so much for explaining to people what that is about as well. Well, we need to go to break, but before we do, Richard, please let our listeners know where can they find you on the internet, or how can they get in contact with you?
Well, just go to richard-lynch-band.com. That's Lynch, richard-lynch-band.com. That's basically the best way to, to find out where we're playing, our merchandise, all the different shows around the country, and they can find all these wonderful interviews that I do around the country, and that's probably the best way to go to. Just richard-lynch-band.com.
All righty, listeners, you heard richard-lynch-band.com. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester, and today our special guest is Richard Lynch. You can find him online at richard-lynch-band.com. We're talking faith, family, and country today, and keeping those traditions alive. So he's not just any music artist. He is an independent country music Hall of Fame artist. So when we're talking country music today, folks, we have someone that can really talk about country music. I know that, Richard, you are still on tour. You're all over the place, and that is so awesome. I know it can be exhausting as well, but can you tell us a little bit more about your touring schedule, and what should people expect when they come to one of your concerts?
Well, it's been an amazing couple of years, and every year kind of surpasses the previous year, I guess you might say, on the amount of different places we get to play. It all started this year in a 2-month run. Well, actually, we played 6 months. The last part, or 6 weeks, the last part of January and all of February, we played in South Texas, almost every night consistently down there. And the people in South Texas, they really love their country music. I'm here to tell you. It started off playing down there, and then we have played all over Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Iowa, Minnesota, New Hampshire. We've done Florida. We've done Alabama. It's been a whirlwind of a year. Yes. And for me to be in a situation to where I can spread something that I love, and by spreading something I love is the fact that I love traditional country music, and we're seeing such an immense amount of interest in that traditional sound again, and I'm so thankful that I get to do what I love to do. And that's pretty amazing way to make a living. If you love something and you get to make a living at it, that's pretty special, lad. You have to admit.
It is. I tell you, it makes getting up in the morning a whole lot easier when you love what you do.
Absolutely. And our schedule is really, it's really staying quite busy now. We are looking forward to going back to Texas. Sure, we do a lot of radio interviews as well. So in addition to the actual live concerts around the country, we are finding ourselves being invited to do more and more radio shows, and we just had something happen this year that has never happened to us before. We just charted on the Texas Radio Network, and for those folks who don't know what that's all about, that's quite an achievement, especially if you're not from Texas. You better be doing something right, and so we really appreciate the fact that we got some songs that's charting on the Texas charts down there right now.
Yes, that is amazing. Congratulations. That is such a good thing, and hats off to all of the team members and all that stuff. I know there's someone out there listening that's saying, I want to be in the music business, and boy, this is just really encouraging, and I see that I can play the type of music that moves me and still be able to do all of these awesome things. Don't let anyone tell you that your particular type of music is not what wants to be heard. Traditional styles of music, there's still a place, even though other types of music are moving in and taking over, but everyone loves a traditional style. It can be very comforting at
Yeah.
times, and you think about your parents or your grandparents and a song that they used to sing or hum along or would always be playing that brings up a good memory, like grandmother, making biscuits or a pie, and there's a certain song that's on and she's just in a great mood and you're like, yes, this is awesome. So it really truly does make a difference. Thank you for sharing that. Now, you also have a passion for our veterans, and I believe your foundation is called Love Tattoo Foundation. Can you
Yes,
tell us
ma'am.
a little bit more? Can you tell us more about that?
I would be honored to. Well, the Love Tattoo Foundation is an organization that me and my wife started here a few years ago to help our men and women who have done so much for our country. The Love Tattoo is actually a song. The poem, it came to me in the form of a poem. A gentleman named Chuck Brisbane from Virginia Beach, Virginia, sent me a poem, and he asked me if I would put some music to it. And then he gave me a little note. He said, this song that you're going to create has inspired me so much because I seen something as I was watching television. I said, tell me more. Mm-hmm. He said he was watching TV, and some of the very first folks that was coming back home from Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And he said, it touched me. I went to see this gentleman, some of these soldiers that was coming back, and they were shot up pretty bad. He said, I wanted to go and see and just tell this soldier how much I appreciate him. Mm-hmm. So he said he went to the hospital, and as he walked towards the veterans hospital room, there was a sign that he had placed on his door, if you're coming here to feel sorry for me, please leave. And Chuck said, wow, that really blew me away, the fact that, this guy is an all-American hero, and yet he doesn't want any sorry for him. So he wrote a poem called The Love Tattoo. So he sent it to me, and I put some music to the poem, and I realized it needed a little more help. So me and another songwriter in Nashville, Tennessee, Mr. Terry Dennis, wrote I guess you might call it a chorus. And we put the music together. I recorded it initially by myself, and it was getting quite a bit of airplay in a tri-state area, Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. And then about a month goes by or 2 months goes by, and I did a show with a gentleman by the name of Ronnie McDowell. And Ronnie McDowell had some major hits in the 70s and 80s and early 90s of his career. And Ronnie McDowell was an absolute amazing character, because not only is he a great entertainer, but I found out that he also did 3 tours of duty in Vietnam. So I sang him the song. He loved the song, and I said, Ronnie, would you do the song with me as a duet? So we got together, we recorded the song, and all the proceeds, and I mean every nickel that comes from the sale of that particular song, goes to help our men and women who have done so much for our country. The proceeds go to a place called the Whirlwind Lodge, which is in Custer, Michigan. And anybody from World War II to today who have served our country is welcome to go there. And if they need a little place, just a little R&R, or if they need some doctor help, or if they just need to get away, it's an amazing facility, and it's just my way and my wife's way of being able to give back a little bit to those folks who've done so much for us.
Mm-hmm. That is so amazing. Such a wonderful story. We are all touched, I think, when especially when they share on the news, when our guys are coming home, and it means so much, I think, to each and every one of us. And it's gotten so political kind of out there, but I think that when we really get down to it, I think everyone respects every soldier, every Marine, every airman, every serviceman when they come back, because things are rough over there, and they may not share their stories with us, but we know that they have done a very awesome thing for us, and that is continue to fight for our freedoms and make sure that we are the country that we say that we should be. So thank you for honoring them in the way that we should continue to, because I can't imagine having to go out and fight for freedoms. It's something that I think that people just kind of forget that someone has to do it. And if it's not you, then it's someone else's son or daughter that's out there, and that's really important. A little side note, I noticed that you said that the gentleman who sent you the poem was from Virginia Beach, Virginia. As many of you know, I am a native of Virginia, so a little hoo-ha there for the state of Virginia. In there. Not that I love you any less, Atlanta. Not that I love you any less. So I want to talk a little bit about, we're talking about faith, we're talking about family, we're talking about country, and you mentioned that you have a little bit of that farmer blood in you as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I actually have more than a little bit. I currently, I was born and raised on an old farm. We knew an awful lot about, raising hay and horses and donkeys and cattle and all that great thing that we do as a kid. And I always knew in my life that at some point I would have my own farm. And so lo and behold, if you work hard long enough and you put your mind to something, anything can happen. So I bought my farm about 17 years ago. It's in a little town called Waynesville, Ohio. And the farm is absolutely my pride and joy. We absolutely love our country way of life. We get to play our country music here in a country atmosphere. And ironically enough, we have a big, beautiful barn that we built here on our farm. And four or five times a year, we actually have a country music concert here on our farm. A portion of the proceeds goes to that place we just mentioned a while ago, the Whirlwind Lodge. And, we honor those men and women who have done so much for us. And a lot of folks in the farming world, in the agricultural world, you might say, has a huge appreciation for our country, for our servicemen and women, and just an appreciation for life itself. And that's not to belittle anybody else out there, but the fact that these men and women do so much and they work so hard and they raise our food and they do so much for us, I am so proud of the fact that I can call these farmers my friends. And they support our music, they support our way of life. It's a really good life that I have. Me and my wife have achieved. It's a hard way of life. There's nothing easy about it. And people ask me, how in the world do you have a farm and all this responsibility and travel as much as you do? I said, you better have friends and brothers and neighbors. That's all I can tell you. So we are very lucky and very fortunate to live the life that we choose and be able to, get out and around and enjoy the music as well as the folks that does so much for us. So we know how lucky we are. And I'll just sum it up by saying the country way of life is pretty awesome because I get to play my country music, live in a very awesome country way of life here on the farm. I'm a lucky guy, I'll just say that.
It goes back to what you were saying earlier, when you get to live your dream and you get to do what you want to do. And, the dream, living the dream doesn't always mean that it has to be, all shiny and fast cars and all that stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with fast cars, but each person has their own idea of what it means to be successful, of what living the life means. And if you're living the life, whatever that means to you, then that's what's important. And I just love it. I just absolutely love it when people get to live in that space. And you said another really important thing, and that is about our farmers. I think that we have we've forgotten about the importance of our farmers in today's culture, simply because the majority of the people want to crowd into the cities, and we live more of a city life, and we forget about where our food comes from. And I'm really glad that in many of the schools, they are having little plots of land that are teaching our children about where the food comes from and how important it is that we understand, from seed to table, that there's someone who's doing that for us, and we don't, food doesn't just manifest at the grocery store, but that someone's really out there doing that work for us and sustaining our food sources for us. So that's really awesome that you're able to share in that. Well, just in case we had someone come and join us a little bit later, Richard, could you please one more time remind everyone, how can they get in contact with you? Where are you on the internet?
Well, if you just go to richard-lynch-band.com, that's L-Y-N-C-H, Richard Lynch Band, that's the best way to get a hold of me. There's a whole bunch of various sites and different information on there, but that'll get you where you need to be, richard-lynch-band.com.
All righty, listeners, don't you go anywhere. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. Our guest today is Richard Lynch of richard-lynch-band.com. He is in the Waynesville, Ohio area. And today we're talking faith, family, and country, keeping those traditions alive. If you joined us a little bit late in the show, let me briefly tell you some of the awesome things that he has done. He is an Independent Country Music Hall of Famer. That's right, we have a Hall of Famer on the show today, folks. He has produced some really, really great singles, including The Better Place. He's talked to us about his current album, Mending Fences. He has participated in and won the Josie-music-awards. He is touring all over our country, helping our veterans. We've talked about farm living. That's right, farm living. For those of you who love sustainability, we're going to touch on it a little bit more. Don't worry. So now you're all caught up. So, Richard, when we talk about chart-topping singles, I mentioned one, but I want you to talk a little bit more about your song Cut and Paste and We're American Proud. Do those two songs have anything to do with each other, or are they independent songs?
Well, they're independent songs, but they are, they have a mindset of a similar mindset. I love our country. I love our I love our freedom. I love our family way of life. So I wrote the song "We're American Proud." But you mentioned the new song "Cut and Paste." That is the song that is currently just exploding for me right now, not only here in the States, but also in Europe. And I'm getting a lot of airplay in Australia and in New Zealand. I understand our management team told me that it is being in rotation and being played in 32 countries right now.
Wow.
So that
Congratulations. That's right.
Thank you. That's nothing short of spectacular in my mind. I am so thankful. But a quick little story I need to tell you about the song Cut and Paste. It was actually on hold and had been on hold by Mr. George Strait for a year and a half. George Strait had that song and had intended on recording that song. Well, for some reason or other, it didn't make the last cut of his current album. So the songwriter, Mr. Nick Nichols, I got to meet him, and he had submitted several songs for me to do on my new album. He said, Richard, these songs that I had given you are pretty amazing. I think they're great. I think they'll suit you. But I think I have a song that really would do even better. I'm going to reach out to George and see if he'll release it if he's not going to record it. Would you be interested in listening to it? I said, George Strait? He said yes, George Strait. Mm-hmm. So Nick Nichols called George Strait, and the song got released back to the songwriter, and therefore I had the opportunity to record it on my new album. And I sum it up by saying if it's good enough for George, it's good enough for me.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. Oh my goodness.
And,
Goodness.
The country music, for me, is the traditional sound. And here's proof positive that traditional country music is alive and well.
Yes.
The song that I recorded, cut and paste, is about a brand new song. It's got that fiddle, it's got the steel guitar, and it talks about our way of life, our current everyday way of life. So that goes to show you that traditional country music can be relevant even in today's high-tech, all-electronic world. So, it's just amazing. And the people have accepted that song so much for me. And I'm just so thankful that I got to record that particular song. And you mentioned the song, We're American Proud. That song came to be, I wrote that song in January of this year. And I'd seen, all the back and forth and the bickering between the election process, our presidential election process. And I'm thinking to myself, wouldn't it be great if we could somehow just state the fact that we are proud Americans? We're all Americans. Let's be proud of it. So I wrote the song, We're American Proud. It talks about our truck driving friends, talks about our farmers, talks about our hard-working military men and women, and it also mentions the man above. That's all American, hard-working, everyday, traditional values summed up into one song. And I think that's why the American Proud song has done so well for me this year as well. Now, that song is not on a new album. It was just released as a single because I wanted to get it out right after the election was done. Just let people know that there's people out there that appreciate our country, and we are America. Let's act like it. So I'm American proud, you might say.
Right. No, I can understand that, and I think that's something that we all need to really do is figure out how to bring us all together instead of all of the divisiveness. Let's concentrate more on the things that bring us together, so our country can be one big happy tapestry of the people that we are. It is an awesome way of trying to unite everyone. And music, what better a platform?
Absolutely. The music touches everybody's soul. If you allow to listen to the music and listen to the story behind it and the message behind it, you find yourself, I find myself doing it anyhow. If I hear a song in the morning and I haven't turned the radio on in the afternoon, chances are I'm still kind of humming that last song that I heard. And it touches you. It stays with you. And most people relate with that. And, if you can take a message in a song and make it a positive message where people can connect with it, what better way to share this gift that the Lord gave me? And I do know it's a gift. I'm thankful for the fact that I was given this talent, and I want to be able to share it with people in a good way. Just to be able to say things and do things and make a positive world for as much as we possibly can.
That is so awesome. For those of you who, the reason why we laughed with if it's good enough for George Strait, if you're unfamiliar with who he is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the nicknames, if you will, that he has is like the King of Country. He is like a legend in country music. So it would be the same as if you wanted to sing a song that was perhaps on hold by Aretha Franklin or Natalie Cole or Whitney Houston, or for our younger listeners, you trying to figure out if Beyonce wants this song, someone that you hold in high esteem. If they have it, if they're holding on to it, then it must be a pretty awesome song. So that's why I laughed. It was like, the George Strait, of course. If he doesn't want it, I will gladly sing that song. So I did it. The point of that was not missed on me. I definitely understood that. Now, I know that you talked about your farm that you have in Ohio, And one of the things that we're talking about so much in today's society is sustainability and trying to go green. The way that many of our grandparents had, and I know that you have a farm, but they had gardens in their backyard, and we try to have a healthier way of living. Have you found that farming has changed much over the years? Are you doing anything differently now? Or have you found that the traditional ways are still tried and true?
Well, the farming on the larger scale has changed immensely. If you're absolutely, your profession is farming, you now have satellite guided tractors. You have so many large pieces of equipment and those different things, and there's a place for that. But in my world, I still have tractors and plows and discs and all the different things that go along with my operation, but everything for me and my wife are hands-on. We raise hay, and I bale lots and lots of hay. I sell the majority of the hay to horse folks and some cattle folks around our area here. But I have 2 quarter horses, I have a pony, and 3 donkeys. So I don't have to have an awful lot of hay to winter them all winter, but I do have to keep in mind to put back about 400 to 500 bales so that they get fed all winter long. And it's great to be in a position to where you can see the fruits of your labor. And by that I mean we sowed our hay crop 3 summers ago, and we have seen this mature, and this year we got 4 cuttings off of this hay crop.
Wow.
It's amazing. For the folks that don't know what I'm talking about, a couple cuttings a year is amazing. We got 4 cuttings this year. So in between my touring and in between my farming, I'm baling hay, feeding horses, playing my guitar, writing songs. I'm not complaining, don't get me wrong. But it's an absolute joy to see the folks come here to the farm, and they get to see something that a lot of folks don't get to see much anymore. I was fortunate that I grew up on a farm, so I know a lot of the things about it. But let's face it, a lot of the farming way of life is disappearing. And and when you get to see young folks especially come and they get to stick their hand out there and feed a horse or see the hay growing or go walk through the barns, I get a lot of enjoyment out of watching them enjoy being on the farm here. It's pretty amazing.
And it is so uplifting almost to see their faces just light up when it's like, wow, I did that. Or I was going to be afraid of the cow, but, the cow didn't eat me up, like I thought he was going to do. This is pretty cool after all. It really and truly is. It really is. And I'm so glad that I did that with my children. I wanted them to be able to experience all of that. So not just the zoo, but we visited farms and all of that. And they will still talk about that to this day. And it's like, wow, who knew that all of those animals were there? You just, being, especially for the city folk, you just forget. If you're growing up in the suburbs, you forget. Unless you have a garden in the backyard or something, you really kind of start to lose touch and have a little bit of a disconnect about where everything comes from. So we are down to about the last 2 minutes of the show. I don't know about you, but listeners, I've had such a good time on this interview today, and I hope that you have as well, that you have learned a little bit of something and that you have enjoyed our time talking about faith, family, and country today. So
I had a ball.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I tell you, when you have a great interview, I think you're supposed to just put it out there and let folks know that you have a good time. I tell people all the time, we're so quick or easy to complain or to speak our minds when someone has done something that irritates or bothers us, but we forget to share the praises and the accolades just as easily. And I think that when someone does something and you have a great time, that you should, give that, even if it's just a virtual high five. You should give out that high five and say, I had a great time today. So thanks so much for being on the
well
show with
said.
me.
Well said.
So we have just, a few minutes left, but I want to make sure that people know about any upcoming projects or events or places where they can come visit you. What would you like to share in the last few minutes?
Well, this new album we call Mending Fences is our third nationally released album, and that is such a feather in my hat. I'm amazed that I get to do this and make a living at something I love to do, and I get to do something that I'm really proud of here in the near future. I'm going to put together a Christmas album. And I've been writing a couple Christmas tunes and putting my head together on that. Mm-hmm. That's a whole different world for me. I've never recorded any Christmas music, but I understand for that 5 or 6 week window that rolls around every year, a lot of radio stations are really looking for something new, or something that they can sink their teeth in and get it on their station. So I'm going to put my best foot forward and get this new Christmas album recorded. I'm looking forward to having that available here in the near future. So another cool little thing I got to do. So that's amazing.
That's right. That's right. When you're creative, though, it's like it never stops. There's always something else that you can do because you're able to do it. So most definitely, why not add that to your repertoire? I don't blame you. Go for it. That's right. Go for it. Well, Richard, we are down to like the last few seconds of the show. If you would please remind everyone where they can find you online.
Just go to richard-lynch-band.com, and you'll be able to find me and my music and all the places we're playing and all the different merchandise that we have. And we kind of touched on it just briefly earlier in the show. But for all the young folks out there that have a passion and have a dream, don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. Surround yourself with people that love you and support in you and believe in you, and the next thing you know, you're on your way.
Very well said. Thank you so much, Richard Lynch, for being on my show today.
Dr. Angela, it was a joy and a pleasure. I hope we cross paths in the near future.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much, listeners, for joining me today for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I will see you back here next week, Mondays, 10 a.m. Thanks, Atlanta. See you next week. Bye-bye.